You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
So Brian Kelly yesterday was on the Paul Feinbaum show. As these coaches do for SEC spring meetings, they make their rounds. They have a press conference. It's really not that organized of a press conference. It can really just be them speaking to a gathering, a semicircle of reporters, honestly. But then they also, they'll go on some ESPN shows. They'll obviously go on Paul Feinbaum, and Brian Kelly was there, and he talked about a lot of different things that we'll touch on a little bit later in the show that actually pertain to the SEC meetings and the future of the league, like scheduling, like NIL, things of that nature. But the very first question out of Paul Feinbaum's mouth to Brian Kelly yesterday was about expectation heading into year 2 at LSU, right? Think about where they came from. Really, this is kind of a trend on LSU's campus right now. Head coaches in year number 2 having major success. Brian Kelly is no different from that expectation and how it happened so fast. And that's what Paul Feinbaum wanted to know. How are you going to handle those expectations here in just year 2 when people are expecting go win it all?
I knew I came down here with high expectations. So, look, this is the SEC. Yeah. So you're not coming down here with, the opportunity to hide. There's no hiding down here. So it's what I expected. We still have some work to do, quite frankly. Georgia, Alabama have been, the staples here, and we've got some work to do, but we're up for the challenge.
So, look, yes, obviously, Georgia, Alabama, they are the staples. 100%. I don't think anybody's disputing that. I think you will hear plenty of people say, Alabama, you don't feel as great about them this year than maybe you have in years past. And it's easy to look at LSU as the prohibited favorite in the SEC West, considering they defeated Alabama last year, made it to Atlanta, Georgia for the SEC championship. It's easy to see all of those things, and we'll get into some of them here. But I think what's interesting is how Brian Kelly kind of began that cut when he said, I knew I came down here with high expectations. And I think obviously as a whole, absolutely as a whole, Brian Kelly, that hire came with high expectations. He was the second winningest coach to Nick Saban in active college football at that point when LSU brought him in. You had the last 3 coaches at LSU win national championships. Of course, there's going to be high expectation as a whole. He gets the big 10-year contract. Like, you're tied to him for a decade. But I think, obviously, last year, expectations were tempered to start. At least that's how I remember it. Sitting in this studio every day, covering the season, going to Eagle 98.1 pregame show every weekend, covering the season. That way, I remember expectations being a little tempered. Like, okay, you know what? They'll probably get 8 wins. That'll be really good for a first year, considering they're coming off of back-to-back 500 seasons. And now you go into year 2 after winning the SEC West in surprise fashion, getting better as the year went on all along, like LSU did. And the conversation has changed to playoff. And let me be clear, that is a fair expectation for LSU this year. It absolutely is. Like I said, people consider them the prohibited favorite to win the SEC West and get to Atlanta. If they can knock off Georgia, they're in the college football playoff. It is a fair expectation for LSU. But I think we need to look a little deeper. Because, yes, obviously you have Jaden Daniels back and you expect him to take the next step after he already had a great season for you last year. You're not where you were without Jaden Daniels. We all know that. Harold Perkins is back. He burst onto the scene. You expect him to take a bigger role moving inside, and by all accounts, that will go very well. They were quite pleased with what they saw from him in spring in that new position with the new responsibilities. You got some question marks in the secondary, and especially at safety and corner, definitely the back end more so maybe. But you have a lot more options than you did last year at those two positions if you're LSU. And oh, by the way, you get Mason Smith back on the defensive line. So you feel very good about the defense. You love your depth at receiver. The depth at running back just keeps growing. And you had to start young guys on the offensive line that shined last year in Will Campbell and Emory Jones. There's a lot to be excited about. So yes, playoffs a fair expectation. You look at the schedule, it's a fair expectation. It makes a lot of sense. But I want to throw this out there because I saw this earlier. So today, ESPN released their bowl schedule for all 41 bowls. And not only schedule, but, date, time, things of that nature. So Brett McMurphy at the Action Network said, well, what a perfect time for way too early bowl projections. And I couldn't agree more. Who doesn't love bowl projections on May 31st? Obviously, you're well away from college football season started. Actually, you're inside of 100 days. But you still have, 95, however many it is. I don't know the exact count, but you're inside of 100. So there's still time. But knowing what we all just went over, right, where playoff is an expectation for LSU, and I think it's a fair expectation. Many of you think it's a fair expectation. But I think when a lot of us talk about LSU, there's so much excitement around them this year, at least in our bubble here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or in Southeast Louisiana, wherever you're listening across the state even. There's so much excitement around them here that sometimes it gets harder to temper expectation.
We're going to have a good football team.
So I wanted to look at these projections from outside to see kind of what the expectation is for LSU. I'll tell you, they're not in the college football playoff. Brett McMurphy's college football playoff was Georgia, Washington out of the Pac-10, Michigan, and LSU's opponent week 1, Florida State. Keep that in mind. He had LSU in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, a New Year's Six Bowl against Penn State, and projected a LSU by 3 point spread on that game. LSU's floor this year should be a New Year's Six Bowl. LSU's floor should be a New Year's Six Bowl. Yes, the college football playoff, fair expectation, but the floor should be a New Year's Six Bowl. You went last year from having minimal expectations, 8-4. That'd be a great year. Maybe they get to 9 wins, and you're very happy. To knocking on the door last year of the college football playoff as a potential the first ever 2-loss team to get in to the college football playoff. If you could have taken care of business of A&M and upset Georgia in the SEC championship, but at worst, at that point, you're thinking they're going to finish 10-2 and get into the New Year's Six Bowl. You were there last year, right on the doorstep, but you end up in the citrus. See, that can't happen again this year. LSU's floor has to be the New Year's Six, with your ceiling being the college football playoff. And Brian Kelly was asked about, so to start that Paul Feinbaum interview, he was asked about expectations, handling the fans' expectations. Later on, he was asked about his own expectations for his team.
We're going to have a good football team. We're going to have to play smart and, all the adages that you've heard many coaches who have sat next to you talk about. We're going to have to stay injury-free, but we've got a quarterback that is developed, and we've got probably confidence now that we can go into games and believe that we can win. Those are really good things to have when you go into a conference like the SEC.
Confidence, another year, a quarterback that's developed, everything we've already mentioned in this segment. But I will tell you what I think has been the most impressive thing that Brian Kelly has built at LSU so far 2 years in, going into his second season. The man hadn't even coached a game in his second season yet, and I'm telling you the most impressive thing that I think that he has built so far at LSU is stability. And that's why for me, floor has to at least be the New Year's Six. You cannot be in the Citrus Bowl or a bowl like that again. You've got too much talent returning on this team. The schedule is manageable for LSU, and more so, yes, the confidence, yes, the talent, yes, the experience, but the stability that Brian Kelly has built so far heading into year 2 in such a short amount of time. That's the biggest thing for me that has me excited, that says, yeah, playoff is a fair expectation for this team. And if they're already projected right now on the cusp of that on May 31st, it's a fair expectation for others around the nation as well. And that is very exciting when it comes to LSU football in 2023.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.